Well, it's been almost 4 years to the day since we very first walked through these doors, and we're full of excitement. Our very first visit here just after COVID, and coming in this garden, I remember doing this, I remember walking in like this, not seeing it as it is now because the transformation is genuinely unbelievable, but the fact that it's just so magnificent now, I can't believe where we're at. But my first experience was walking in this garden. I walked up to here, you could just see this top step, and there was a little lizard on the wall, and it ran up here and it ran along the wall. You could barely see the walls because they were covered in brambles, and all of this was just brambles. Everything here was just brambles. You couldn't see down to the end of either side. It was just all completely overgrown. There was people living here at the time, squatters, and they had like a path that came in, and obviously I remember coming up the stairs, and again all of this was overgrown all around here, all up here, and there was plants going through the doors. Obviously the doors had all rotted out, and we got to walk through it. But that's where my excitement started here. That's where I knew the price that it was on the market for, it was never going to sell for that. And I think that's where, for me, the dream or the dreaming really began, because up until that point it was kind of out of our reach with we knew what we'd have to spend on it and stuff. So bringing it all together and seeing it and seeing the state that this was in, obviously the photos that had been took had been a long time before we got here, so it had just completely gone. It had all completely gone, and the work that went in, even in the first probably 6 to 8 months, just clearing this garden. There was brambles, like I say, everywhere. You couldn't see any of this. We have 3 levels. We didn't know there was 3 levels. It just looked like it went out. If we'd have stepped over, we wouldn't have knew, because you couldn't see the walls. It was just brambles everywhere. The only way we knew was we could just see steps. So it, like I say, the transformation is genuinely out of this world. And once we got the dead trees out, we were still left with 40 odd trees, which we'll fast forward to in a bit, that again we had to take out because there was no trees in this garden other than the one that we left in the far corner, which we'll come on to in a bit. Well, the work continued in 2020, and like I say, I was here for a few weeks, and before we started YouTube, before YouTube even became an even thought for us to do, I was doing video diaries for Tez, showing him what I was up to and showing him like how hard it was, because I'd never done anything like that. It was completely new to me, with chainsaws and strimmers and just trying to clear my way through something that had just been left for so long. And yeah, so you'll see some of the footage here. Like I say, it was way before YouTube, and it was a case of we had to clear it. We wanted to be able to see what was here. We wanted to be able to just basically clear the gardens and plan for the future and dream about what it could once be. There was also another story as well in 2020 where we met Madame Verdier, and she'd asked us if we'd found the nice stairs yet. I was like, yeah, the stairs in the turret, they're absolutely beautiful. She's like, no, the stairs in the garden. I was like, oh yeah, the round ones that lead you into the garden. I said, I've cleared a little bit around that. And at that point, I'd only done like a tiny little bit of it. And she said, no, the beautiful stairs. And we had no idea what she meant. So she told us that if we went straight on from the back of the chateau, we'd find a way to get to these stairs basically. And you'll see some of the drone footage, because this part of the garden was still a complete wreck at this point. I cleared so much of it, but it was just like a jungle in this corner, and I needed more than me basically to get it out. So we were all here. There was 8 or 9, I think there was big laurels in this corner, again all self-seeded, and they'd just been left to go wild, and it was a case of we needed to get them out. And then a couple of weeks after that, we had the FOSS septic going in, and we had all the trouble trying to get that sorted. But then we had the heartbreak of the wall coming down, and again it was just so unexpected. We didn't know what to say, we didn't know what to do. Obviously Terry broke down, we all broke down at some point, just because it then became overwhelming. It was too much. It was, what have we done? And again, it was going to come down at some point. And when we've spoke to the owners since then, the old owners, past owners, people that have lived here, they said they can't believe it had lasted as long as it had, to be honest with you. And you have to remember that the old wall was a lot higher than this as well. We've done something that's safe and manageable going forward. But again, the only reason that this wall is here is thanks to you guys and our followers and our supporters. You've made all this possible, and with the help of friends and family, we managed to get this wall back up again. But the work that was involved, it wasn't just about getting a wall back up. This was just piles of rock that had fell down, so we had to sift through, we had to sort all the stones out, we had to manage everything, we had to get everything into piles to be able to build it back up again, and to actually just have a workable pile of stone basically, rather than just piles of rubble. And Terry and Graham, my dad, did an absolutely amazing job just getting it back to this. Again, considering neither of them have really done anything like this before, anyone, when you walk into this garden now, they'll tell you the wall looks like it's always been there, and that's exactly what we wanted when we did it. 2021, it was a hard year, but we made some amazing friends through it. And we kind of met Karen, who's just been she's been like our fairy godmother. She's just been absolutely amazing with us. And the one thing that Karen loves is gardens. And we started talking, so that kind of led us into 2022 by this point, when the wall started going back up, and we started talking to Karen, and she said she had a friend that would be able to help us with the garden. And again, we didn't know what she meant by help us with the garden, whether she was going to send someone over, or we didn't know at that point exactly what it was. So it was a case we started talking and plans started to come together. She introduced us to Shane, and we started talking about what we wanted the garden to be. And the one thing that we said about this garden, and the thing that we're okay with this garden, the Chateau never had a garden like this. Nothing at all like this. And we were quite happy to say to Karen and Shane, this is our stamp on the Chateau. Everything else has been a restoration, but this is something that we knew that we weren't destroying anything because of what it was. There was nothing that we could have done with the old garden the way that it was. So to be able to put our mark on the Chateau and say, well, this was us, this was something that we created, and this is something that hopefully you'll still be hearing and enjoyed in 50, 60, 70 years time, and people can come and enjoy these, and to have this sort of space. And so that's where our relationship kind of started with Karen. Well, moving on to 2023, so early 2023, it was a case of we knew Karen and Shane were coming. They'd planned to come, I think it was March or April of 2023, and we wanted, this needed to be a blank canvas. And at this point we still had nearly 40 trees in this garden. Some were half dead, some were healthy, but they were all self-seeded, and they weren't part of the plans. None of them could stay. We'd already had that conversation. We'd had video calls back and forward with Karen and Shane, and none of them could stay. And the only one that was going to stay was the one that was originally here, and we were never going to take that away. But as you can see why now. But that, again, sheer amount of work. This was, like I say, we're not talking little trees. We're talking, some of the trees were just 20-30 tonne just in the wood alone that we got, and split. And perfect, again, it was absolutely ideal because we've got wood drying out now that's going to see us through the next 4 or 5 years. But that amount of work, and just, I don't know whether you remember the picture of me, I was stood literally about here, and there was a tree root that was so ginormous we had to dig around 10 to 15 feet down and bury it upside down, just because we had nowhere to put it. We had nowhere to get it out of the garden. There was literally nothing that we could have done with it. So the only thing to do was bury it. And again, luckily we've got some amazing friends. Bricko Mark helped us out with it, and we got it buried, and that was that. But just even getting to that point, like I said, the 3 years leading to that point is, you can't put I genuinely couldn't put a number on the man hours that have got us to this point. And that was just in time. We literally, I think we got the last trees out about 2 days before Karen and Shane came, and we were in here logging them all up, moving them all down to where we split all the logs. And it, like I say, we just did it like in the nick of time with the weather. So that was amazing. And then getting to meet them guys for the first time, and to see these plans, to hold them in our hands, and to think about what this garden's going to be, and to talk about. That's where the planning started. That's what was the planning stage now. And what we needed to do is we needed to visit garden centres in and around France to see what was available, because obviously Shane had an idea of hundreds of plants that he wanted. And I think even now we've got 150 different types of plants in this garden. And it was a case that he wanted to know how many of them he could get. So he might have had a list of 300 at this point, and it obviously had to be narrowed down and made to fit what we could do. And obviously what's in our budget, what might be $5 in America might be $30-40 here, and if we're needing 50 or 60 of them. So that's where we started planning. The paths alone, we've probably took 180 tonne of dirt out of this garden, and had to move it to other places around the Chateau where we needed it, where we needed the actual soil. And we've managed to create car parks down the end, and we've done what we needed to with it. But that was weeks and weeks, it was months of work, just getting these paths out, getting it dug down, getting it right. And then it sat for 6-8 months because we had rain. We had nothing but rain and we couldn't get back into the garden. Moving on to 2024, and this was where it was basically everything had to come together. We'd been kept inside for probably 6 months where it had rained, so the garden was at a complete standstill, and it genuinely was completely heartbreaking because we couldn't get out, and it wasn't our choice. It was purely, it rained every day pretty much for 6 months. We couldn't use the digger, we couldn't use the equipment in the garden, and it just made it completely impossible. So we finished off, I think we got into February, we had a couple of weeks. And what that meant is we could finish the actual paths themselves, and that was just removing the last few ton of dirt from the garden, which again, in total, we've probably took 180, 200 ton of dirt just out of the garden. But again, we're on a time scale now. We knew Shane was coming early spring, and we had to get this sorted, we had to get it right. So we started planning, we started looking at it and started looking what we actually needed to do to make this happen, and that's kind of why everything's moved along so quickly in the garden. So we got the dirt out, and then we had to plan, no mean feat, probably just short of 1 kilometre of irrigation, all these pipes underneath the path. So we'd already dug the pipes out, and then we had to go another foot down to put the actual pipes underneath the path. And then we have the electrics so that we can have these wonderful fountains, and we are going to have lights in here as well. So we've planned all this in for the long term, and the electrics are situated in the garden so that we can put lights in and make it beautiful. But that's where we had to start looking at other things then. Before we could get the gravel in, we knew the gravel was going to be a big job, but we had to basically map the beds out, and we've done that with the borders, and just to the contextual side of it, I don't think like we understood like how big it was going to be. We've got 1,400 blocks have gone down to make this shape. Now again, this isn't easy shapes. We don't do this. We've never done landscaping before. We've never done anything like this before. So to go through 1,400 blocks, to set them, to get it precise, to get the symmetry, to get it exactly how the plans were, it was so difficult. The mathematics involved in it was unbelievable. Like I say, I'm not a mathematician, so it was so difficult to get them and to lay them. And 1,400 blocks, again, sounds simple. They were only on 140 on a pallet. We could only get one pallet in the van, and we were literally, by the time we were getting through, we were laying 100 to 150 a day. So it was only a day's work. We were having to go back and get more, and then it got to the point where we bought them out of it, so we had to wait for them to come back in again. So the challenge is, it's not like anywhere else we've been in the world. It was difficult to actually stay on track with this, but we knew we had to get it done. And then the borders framed what then started bringing the garden to life, which was the paths, because the paths, they really brought, you could see the shape, you could see the form, you could see everything what it was going to be. You say these numbers, you say 200 ton in your head, and it's 200 tons, 200 ton, it doesn't mean anything. But when you see 200 ton of gravel show up on your door, you think, oh my goodness, how are we going to get this into place? And again, that's when our family came over, and we did kind of plan it for them getting here, so it was well timed, but everyone just came together to get these paths in place, because we had Shane coming the next week and it had to be done, and it just made it absolutely perfect timing. The family were unbelievable, and we got it done. So these are the stairs that we literally spent about 2 weeks looking for, and I know that sounds crazy because you can see them so clearly now, but you have to bear in mind we were here 3 days before we even found the field that we're in right now, because this was so badly overgrown, and it was, like I say, just abandoned. It was neglected. And once we found them, I think the delight in it and seeing them restored now, the job that Terry's done on these is absolutely unbelievable. They look genuinely as good as new. So people are going to be able to enjoy these for a lot more years, and I think if he hadn't done the work that he'd done, again, these would be, they'd be crumbling and there'd be issues. There was trees growing out of them and all sorts. So now we're up to where we are. We're a couple of weeks away, and Shane's back over, and it's the really exciting time now. It's time to go and look for these plants. And we were really fortunate when we went to buy the urns and the fountains. We actually spotted a garden centre on the way home, and it just ended up being the absolute perfect garden centre. It had so much of what Shane needed. I think his list is 150 plants. I think he managed to get the majority of what he was looking for in this one place, and what he didn't get, he knows he can get from there, and she can get them, and they're in contact now talking about whatever plants they're going to put in and what it's going to be. But the ones that they had, we couldn't get cypress. to have 6 cypress all the same size, to know that these are going to grow and all be beautiful and grow together and just be in shape, and they do really frame the garden. And the second that they went into the ground, the garden came to life. It was literally as if it had been dead for so long, and it just rose out of the ground. And the same with the little hydrangea trees. They were, again, just seeing just a couple of things go in, it brought it up out the ground, and now we have these borders of plants that are just absolutely beautiful. And we've never had anything on this scale, so we're having to learn as we go. But before I walk past it, lots of yous have said about what we're going to do in the centre. Now again, we found this after about 2 weeks of cutting through the garden, and this is the original sundial that was here, and I think it doesn't look out of place, does it? It looks like it's always been here. And I think what we do is we speak to a stonemason, we see what they can do for the top of this, and I think we have a sundial here. Right now it's at home and it looks beautiful, but I think it's the perfect place for it. Like I say, it was in the back side of the garden, on the wall on the back there when we finally got to that wall, but I think seeing it there in situ, in place, I personally think it's the right place for it. So we'll see with that one over time. But just some of the beautiful plants that we have. We've got trailing geraniums that are going to cover these beds, and I know lots of you have asked us what we're going to do with the beds. We are sorting it out. We're looking at bark to go down on them, and chippings to actually cover it. We don't want to go plastic. We understand the consequences of plastic. I think what we want to do is be as natural as we can. The chippings will suppress the majority of the weeds. Yes, we're still going to have weeds, but that's normal. We just spend the time. One of us, one day a week, will come out and we'll de-weed the garden, just make sure it looks absolutely pristine. But seeing the pineapple lilies come to life, just to see the choice here, just to understand and know what these plants are, I think, to be able to point at them. We've got agapanthus, and I think on both sides they're just about to flower, which again are going to be so majestic. But this is only its first year. This is literally the first year that these plants are going to go in, and it's only going to get better from here. It's only going to look more and more wonderful, and I'm sure we're going to have Shane and Karen back any time now, hopefully for the autumn, and then we can start looking at the other bits and pieces. We're not done here. There's about another 2,000 plants still to go in this garden. Just to put things into context here, we are nowhere near complete, but just to see it at the stage that it is, I think it's unbelievable. I now know this is Troisia Aztec Pearl. I know that. It's unbelievable. I know all my little different plants, and I know how to look after them as well, and that again is thanks to Shane and Karen, and we can't thank them enough for the work that they've put into this. They've worked all the way along with us on this, and there's things that Shane's had to change, there's things that Terry's had to change, but we've come together as a team unbelievably well. So we're so happy with it, and we've decided to do a different walkthrough this time. This is a talk and walkthrough, but there's so much that's gone on in this garden. I don't think it would have been any justice just to show you pictures of it. We have to explain it, especially for the new people joining this channel, and I hope you understand why we've done this, and understand our journey now as well, and how much this actually means to us. So if you have enjoyed today, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you got the bell clicked for notifications. This garden is only going to get better. This is just the beginning. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.
If you'd like to be part of our journey and help restore the chateau, then please join us on Patreon, where you'll be part of our journey, receive a piece of the history, and get exclusive videos.